everybody, welcome back to Cast Album Chat with Tyler. Thanks for joining me again. Today we've got something a little bit different. You know, last time we were talking about the Full Monty recordings. Yes, the temperatures are rising, but do not worry, I will keep my clothes on. Today, I wanted to talk about a certain record label because the way that I kind of come up with ideas for videos is I talk about one subject and I think, oh, I need to write that down. I've written this down about 10 times that I need to do a video about this record label. So today, we're going to talk about Honda Music International. A little bit of background on Honda Music International, or I should say HMI. You've probably seen that if you own any of these recordings. Maybe you didn't know that you did, although you really have to look for them if you want to find them. Honda Music International is kind of a big record company, and then there's an offshoot, it's a division called HMI, and they had this international cast recording series that was put out sometime, I think they started in the mid to late 90s, probably late 90s is when they started releasing these albums. And they had to have lasted into the early 2000s just because of some of the recordings that they did release later on. But I'll get into that later. So I'm going to kind of structure this video a little bit on, I would like to mention all of them that I either have or I'm looking for, although I have the majority. But you know, I have spoken about some of these recordings before, so I'll kind of start with those. There are some other recordings that are really just reissues. Mostly for the Japanese market, but completionists like myself, we do like to get these recordings as well, to have a different version, even though a lot of the times it is the same, even the same disc itself. But then I'll kind of get into the bulk of things about the recordings that really only ever came out on vinyl or were very rare on CD. And so that's why I really think that HMI is a fantastic label. Because they released so many things that were not available before or after. Quickly, I wanted to mention that the man that owns Honda Music International and therefore owns HMI, his name is Yoshihisa Honda. I was talking to John Yap about him. I don't know if they had met each other or if they were just aware of each other being record producers, but he did say that he just really got this wild hair to start releasing all of these recordings. I don't know how he found all of them or how he chose them. So if anyone has any background, I would love to hear, if you know why he chose these recordings, or how he came to own the rights in the Japanese market. These first three recordings I'm going to talk about are recordings that I've already spoken about, so I wanted to mention them, but I'm not going to spend too much time on them. Of course, in the Icelandic video, I was talking about the original Icelandic cast recording of Little Shop of Horrors. You can go back to that video and check that one out. Great recording, for sure. One of my favorite recordings ever released by HMI is Men of La Mancha from Mexico, El Hombre de la Mancha, and I believe this is from usually has the date back here, 1969. That cover there. As you can see, a lot of these back covers look very, very similar. That's something I like about these releases, is that most of the time they are pretty uniform. On the side, and I'll probably throw up a picture here of some of these, you can see the title, it says what cast recording this is, and then it gives you the catalog number there. So yeah, I like the uniformity. On the other side, it's all in Japanese. See if I can throw that up later on. But yeah, so the last one that I did want to talk about is the Japanese recording of Evita. I don't remember which video I spoke about this, but I certainly did. It might have been the digital album video. This is the HMI release. It looks slightly different than the others that I have. I have another one on Solid Records, and honestly, that one's remastered and sounds a lot better, but this was the one that I had, when I was looking for this recording. This is the one that was available when I was a kid. This is the one that I was searching for many, many, many years, so I definitely needed to have this one in my collection as well. Second little group of recordings are there are cast recordings that were released in other markets on CD already, and are really not, well, I want to say they're not terribly difficult to find. Some of these actually are difficult to find, even from their own markets. But you know, these 4 CDs that I'm talking about are, this is kind of a strange one as far as packaging is concerned. This is the original Vienna cast recording of Evita. As you can see, it's a little bit different on the back. This one actually has some pictures that they put there, but you know, it has the standard sung in language, in this case German. Got the same, you know, side information with the Evita original Vienna cast. But yeah, this came out on Jupiter Records, I think sometime in the 90s. And I also believe that the sound quality of the Jupiter release is better than this one. I just think this is a fun little one to talk about because it's printed on this strange kind of like, it's not construction paper, but it's a very thick kind of paper and it's yellow. The original CD release from Jupiter Records is white and black, as are most Evita recordings. So this is just kind of a fun little weird thing to have. If you can only find this one, go ahead and get it. It's fine. Otherwise, get the Jupiter release. The next recording, it's so interesting that he chose this recording. Jekyll and Hyde from Hungary. On the back, it does say original Budapest cast, but I do have to look back here. I like to do a little bit of research when I'm listening to recordings to see, you know, when a production premiered, where, and actually this was, I think it was a, yeah, it's actually, the information here is on the back as well. It was a co-production between 2 theaters in Hungary, and I cannot pronounce the name of the city. Békéscsaba? Maybe, possibly. But yeah, it does say that it premiered on February 16th, 2001 at that theater, then later opened in Budapest. Why am I telling you this? I don't know, but I'll throw up some images here as well. Interesting thing about this is, you know, the back here is, like I said, you know, kind of the standard HMI release, but the booklet itself and my case kind of fell apart, but the booklet and the CD are actually not HMI issued. These are from the original release. I don't remember exactly what the record label was for the original release. It's not actually on here, so it might have just been kind of independently released or through the theater. But I think it's pretty cool that they chose this recording to later release in the Japanese market. And then finally, I've got 2 Les Mis recordings here, 2 of my favorites, the highlights of the Prague production, the original Prague production, and the original Antwerp production. Once again, you know, these are pretty standard. The difference between these 2 is that, you know, with the Antwerp production, which came out later, this is a very similar situation to the Hungarian Jekyll and Hyde. The CD and the booklet itself, and this weird little leaflet that comes with it, I don't really know what that is identical to the other release. This came through Arcade Records in Belgium. So I don't know why he just decided to repackage the back of it. I guess it could have, you know, done a different, it could have just kind of not even repackaged anything and just sent it out to the Japanese market. But this one is exactly the same as the Belgian release. And then the other one, the Czech cast recording, the Prague cast recording, as you can see down here, is interesting because, you know, it does have some pictures here. The disc itself is almost exactly like the Bonton release, and I think it says Bonton here at the top, so that was the original record label. Back is your standard HMI. But what's interesting, this is some nerdy stuff right here, so get ready for it. The other release I have from Prague of this CD has a silver center here, and this one's just clear. So that's kind of the difference. One final thing that keeps me up at night, this is weird, is, you know, when you put these all together, you know, you have the name of the show, the city that it came out, and then on the other side in Japanese. Why is this Belgian cast backwards? This thing, let me tell you about, sometimes I'll just wake up at 3 a.m. and go, the Belgian recording of Les Mis. It's weird, it looks strange on my shelf, and actually I have to turn it kind of backwards and around so that it doesn't look funny next to all the other recordings. But that's just my little OCD thing. So these are recordings that came out in other markets that were just kind of repackaged for the Japanese market. So the third group of recordings it's actually a stack of recordings that I'm looking at right now that I can't talk about all day long. I could actually do a full series on HMI recordings. So I'm gonna try to zip through these as quickly as I can. That being said, there are some that really stick out to me. And then, if you have any questions about these, please comment down below, ask questions. I would be more than happy to do a full video on any one of these because they are just so interesting and rare. But for the sake of brevity and as kind of a beginner's course to HMI, here we go with the majority of the recordings that were released by HMI. First is the Tokyo cast recording of Annie Get Your Gun. This one, it's fairly standard. You don't really get a lot other than the two leads, which are Chiemi Eri and Akira Takarada, who was in the original Godzilla films. Standard packaging here, sounds really great, but you don't really get an overture, you don't get too much ensemble in this, so it's almost kind of like a duets album there. Next up is the Tel Aviv cast recording from 1989 of Blood Brothers. This show, I like the score, it's kind of simple, before I went to see it in the West End, but I have never cried like that in public, y'all. This show will really get to you. Interesting thing about this recording is it follows the, it sounds a lot like the 1983 London recording, when it was revived in, I think 1988 in the West End that was there for, that production was there for decades. It did change a little bit, but this one really kind of follows the example of the 1983 London recording, so it sounds a little bit different. But you get some names on here that you'll see in other Israeli recordings. Shlomit Aharon, who was, I believe, Eponine in Les Mis, just a couple of years before. Yuval Dor is also on here, who was also in Les Mis. Enjolras, maybe. But that's definitely one to check out. It's a very good recording. This is one that I always wanted to find when I was young. I saw these just floating around on the internet, and this cover just got my attention of the MC from the Tel Aviv cast recording of Cabaret here, sticking out his tongue. Very, very interesting. I looked for this one for the longest time, and I think I finally got it maybe about, I don't even think it was 15 years ago, but I was over the moon when I got it. It's a good recording. Don't have anything against it. It just kind of sits in the middle there. Of course, this is from 1989. So it's kind of in that weird 80s group of recordings of Cabaret. But we're checking out, and you'll see here, Mickey Cam plays Sally, and she later comes back. She's done some other stuff, and I think the one that's sticking out in my mind right now is a revival of Fiddler on the Roof in Hebrew. So check this one out if you can. Another one here, Can Can from Stockholm, from the 70s. Orchestra is very light. I would call it a band. And it's, I wouldn't say modern orchestrations for the time, but it just sounds very thin. Luckily, you do get Ulla Sollert on this recording. I spoke about her in the Icelandic video. She's a Swedish artist that went out to Iceland to do Kiss Me Kate and some kind of weird hybrid, I believe, of two languages. But yeah, this one, I mean, if you're a big fan of Can Can, I say go for it. Maybe I need to get into Can Can a little bit more. I always kind of considered it to be lesser Porter. But if you like Can Can or Porter or Swedish cast recordings or Ulla Sollert, this is one to get. Oh, this one's quite special to me. This is the original Tokyo cast recording of The Fantastics. Very much highlights. It only has 13 tracks on here. But we also, again, get Akira Takarada on this recording from Annie Get Your Gun and the Godzilla movies. I think this is a great recording because it has, the sound quality has a nice intimacy to it. And I uniformly enjoy the cast. This one comes with a few pictures in it as well. And I don't think this is a repackaging, but there are a few record labels here, probably from, the record labels that they licensed from, RCA and BMG here. So that disc looks a little bit different, but, otherwise packaging's about the same. So if you're a fan of the Fantastics, and especially Fantastics recordings that came out, within the, the first 10 years of the show's existence, this is one to go and find. I didn't really know where to stick this next recording, but this is the original Yiddish cast recording from Tel Aviv of Fiddler on the Roof. What's interesting about this one is it's listed as an HMI release for sure, but physically it looks nothing like any other HMI release, namely because there's no Japanese on this, and it is kind of shared as a release from HMI and NMC. NMC released a lot of other Israeli show tunes probably about 15, 20 years ago. Can't remember when they released those. But you know, you get the other Fiddler on the Roof recording in Hebrew from the 60s, The King and I, Hair, and a lot of Israeli recordings, as original Israeli musicals as well. So if that's something that interests you, definitely check it out. This one is just pretty cool because it's in Yiddish. You know, you don't get too many in Yiddish. We were lucky to get an even more complete recording in Yiddish of Fiddler on the Roof a few years ago. But this one is very authentic. So if you can find this one, I think I've seen it available every once in a while online. Just doesn't look like the other HMI releases. Okay, back to our standard stuff here. This is kind of a little wackadoodle one. This is Guys and Dolls from Seoul, South Korea. It's from 1985, and you know, sometimes these are just, they're hard to make out sometimes because, you know, this is all in Japanese. I put it through translators before, I believe brown color there. I put it through translators before. It doesn't really give a lot of great information. Really strange cover, and even the actors on the back, you know, I wish we had actually gotten some of their names in Korean script. We don't have that here. Also, these orchestrations I think are almost a knockoff of the 70s version of Guys and Dolls, which is kind of disco-fied. There is a lot of weird just dialogue, like tracks full of dialogue on this thing. I'm honestly talking too much about it. It's wackadoodle, it's weird. If you want to find it, great. But otherwise, don't lose any sleep if you're not able to find this one. Oh, another one of these, this is my favorite. Hello Dolly from Paris, France. This production did open in Belgium, actually, in Liège, first in 1971, then went to the Mogador Theater in Paris in 1972. This is good. This is great. This is, I don't know, I was thinking about doing a video of unpopular opinions, but just not to go down a rabbit hole, I would say that Annie Cordy from this recording is probably the best Dolly ever on record. She's got a lot of personality, she's wonderful. This is a little bit different, you get a pink back on it. I need to find a different copy of this because I think this one was slightly damaged a little bit, but it's, you know, she's upside down. Anyway, you know, that's the packaging for it. But if you can find this one, this is one of the best releases that they put out. This one might actually be streaming as well and available from other record companies. But I want to say that HMI was the first label to release this on CD, I think. Next, going with the Harvey Schmidt, Tom Jones theme here, the original Tokyo cast recording of I Do, I Do. This is my most recent, if I'm not wrong, yeah, my most recent acquisition from HMI. And I actually don't know this show very well. I have the off-Broadway cast recording from the 90s, so I need to sit down and listen to them a little bit more. But I will say that both of the actors sound great, but they almost sound like Japanese actors imitating Mary Martin and Robert Preston. So it's just kind of interesting to hear that. But yeah, definitely check this one out. I see it kind of floating around sometimes on Discogs and eBay. So if you like the score, go find this one. Oh, this is one that any Jesus Christ Superstar fan will tell you have to have. This is the original Tokyo cast recording from 1976. This one, I think, is our first 2 CD release, and there's another one here that I'll talk about in a second. But I'm here to tell you, you don't really need to find this one. It's interesting, you know, I mean, it's the original Japanese release of Jesus Christ Superstar, but they're just not really rock singers, nor are they really musical theater singers. So it just doesn't sit well in their voices. Orchestra's a bit slow, tempo, it's a bit strange. Packaging's pretty standard, but I've seen this one go for a lot of money because there are a lot of people that are diehard Jesus Christ Superstar fans. But, you know, unless you can find this for well under $50, I would say don't go for it. It's really cool. I love having these, you know, Fat Boy 2 CD cases, but I found it pretty cheap. So what can I say? Okay, this one's pretty sweet. I don't know what the source of this recording is. I've never seen it available on vinyl or on CD other than this release right here. This is what they call the original Moscow cast recording, or Moscow, however you want to pronounce it, of My Fair Lady. What's super interesting about this, there are a lot of super interesting things about this recording. First of all, the cover, this kind of like Pepto-Bismol pink. This drawing of Eliza here shows up on a studio recording somewhere. Can't remember which one. So it leads me to believe that there was never a release of this before. They just took something that was pre-existing, slapped original Moscow cast recording, the HMI logo up here, and then something in Cyrillic, which I don't know what it says. Maybe I should have translated that before. I can't even remember what the liner notes look like on this thing. I'm gonna have to pull it out and see. I generally try not to touch these. That's what we get. Okay, there's no information whatsoever. It's just Pepto-Bismol pink everywhere. And even on the back, you know, the actors' names, all of this is in Cyrillic, and they only have their first initial. So I had to do a lot of research. Hopefully I can put up some information here on the screen about their names. So even if you have this and you're looking for their names, maybe I can help you out with that. What I think is really interesting about this, about being called the Moscow cast recording, is this was most definitely a live recording. It was recorded live at the Congress Palace of Kremlin in Moscow, USSR, June 6th, 1965. But the group that performed this was the Odessa Musical Comedy Theater Company. Unfortunately, I think a lot of us know kind of what's happening over there. We're learning a lot about geography from the area in a way that we probably would not like to. But Odessa is part of Ukraine, and this is when the Ukraine was part of the USSR. So it was a traveling company that I don't know if they went all around the country or if they mostly just kind of stayed between the two cities. They might have gone into what used to be Leningrad, St. Petersburg. But, you know, this is definitely in Russian, and the cast is pretty fantastic. The Eliza here, very spunky. She sounds very young, but she still has a nice, solid voice, and she gets in some belting as well. So it's kind of interesting to hear the Cockney version of Russian. Another interesting thing about this recording is that the Higgins sings the role. I would assume that he also did some of the operatic repertoire in this theater company. And so you can hear the role sung. Not everyone's cup of tea, but I think it's really cool. So this is kind of one of my top 5 just to find. It's so rare. It hasn't been released before or since. Sound quality, not the best because it is recorded live. It almost sounds like it's kind of a fan recording, if you know what I mean, but it's not. It is an official release of the original Odessa, Ukraine cast recording of My Fair Lady, sung in Russian, recorded in Moscow. Another one of my favorites here. This is Peter Pan from Hong Kong. Something that I think is really, really cool about a lot of these releases, you know, we get the Ukrainian, Russian, USSR version of My Fair Lady. You know, we got the Seoul cast recording of Guys and Dolls before they were really releasing a lot of Korean cast recordings. So, you know, from these countries that don't generally produce cast recordings. This is from the 70s, 1976 actually. And what is also ultra cool about it, not just that it's from Hong Kong, it is sung in Cantonese. My case is a little cracked up here, but you know, it'll tell you what language it's sung in. Betty Chung was kind of the reason for the production. You know, she was a popular singer back in the day in Hong Kong. And you know, we don't get a lot of recordings in Cantonese. We actually don't get a lot in Mandarin, to be honest, but you know, once in a while they will come out. One that sticks out in my mind is Mamma Mia, which I really love that recording. But most of the musical theater that is now being performed in China is either going to be an English language tour or in Mandarin, but you don't get a lot of Cantonese. This is, another one of those recordings, kind of like the Annie Get Your Gun from Tokyo. This is really centered on the performers and not the production. So you don't get the overture, you don't really get a lot of, there's some ensemble stuff in here, but it's really just about Betty Chung and James Wong, who plays Captain Hook. You get some really cool little pictures here. This is a reproduction of the original liner notes. So if you can find this one is also one of my top 5. Maybe not because it's like my favorite thing to listen to, but it's super rare. And just, I don't know, it's from a cool production with a cool background. So check out the Hong Kong cast recording of Peter Pan. This is kind of a twofer, which is not on a 2 CD set. It's just 1 CD. But they're highlights from the Takarazuka company of West Side Story and Oklahoma. If you don't know anything about Takarazuka, definitely check them out. I don't think I will be speaking about this group very much on the channel, just because I don't want to call it a novelty. I don't want to put down anyone's art form, but it is a 100% female group that is performing all of the roles. So they play the females, the males, they play everyone, down from the bass to the soprano. So it's an interesting sound. And I think that the West Side recording, let me show you here, this is the packaging. West Side on one side, Oklahoma on the other side. They just kind of put both of these on the same CD because they were released on LP together as well. And there's some crossover between the casts. Interesting thing is that Oklahoma does not use the original orchestrations. That sounds a little bit strange, a little hokier than Oklahoma would normally sound. But West Side Story, that's the good half of the CD, I think, that you should listen to. It's actually interesting hearing a woman playing a man, in this case Tony, who's a young man, so the voice actually fits quite well. Maria is great on this recording, and then the singer who sings Somewhere is also fantastic. It seems like it took Japan a little while to get operatic singing in musical theater kind of under their belt, as evidenced by the recordings of Phantom of the Opera, for example. Not an opera, but it has some operatic singing in it. And you can tell with each recording that came out, they were just getting better and better. And I was surprised to hear this singer here singing Somewhere fantastically back in the 60s. So if you can find this one, this is the Takarazuka cast recording of West Side Story and Oklahoma. And to finish things up, speaking of West Side Story, we have the original Tokyo cast recording of West Side Story. I don't listen to this one very often. It's from 1977. I know it was released on vinyl before, but it's another one of those Fat Boy 2 CD cases, which I like. Super 70s coloring on this, so I love that as well. I think it might be, I don't want to say it's the full piece, but it's the majority of the piece. I know there is some dialogue in here. When I transferred this to my computer, I had to listen to the scenes and follow along with the script to see, who's speaking and whatnot. So there's a lot more than just the songs. Obviously, because it is a 2 CD set, so you get all the dance breaks, you get all the Somewhere ballet. Unfortunately, I will say the cast is maybe not, I don't want to say not my favorite. I just don't think that maybe they were prepared at this point, as I was saying about operatic singing. This is not necessarily operatic singing, but it has been part of operatic repertoires before. Takeshi Kaga as Tony is on the Jesus Christ Superstar recording. He sounds better here, so that's a good thing. Akiko Kuno, who is Evita on the Tokyo recordings of Evita. This is just not her thing. I think she sounds really great in her upper register when she's singing the higher notes that Evita would normally belt on the Evita recording. But when she gets up into the stratosphere here, you can tell she's not as comfortable with that. I think she has a marvelous voice, but I think that if you want to fully appreciate it, listen to her Evita recordings. She also played Grisabella on one of the Cats recordings, so check her out on those. She sounds phenomenal. And the other names, Masachika Ichimura, Osami Ino, are names that pop out to me as well. for being on other cast recordings. So, you know, if you can find this one, this is kind of similar to the Jesus Christ Superstar recording in that, you know, don't spend an arm and a leg on it. But, you know, if you can find it at a good price, it's worth having. It's a collector's piece, obviously. So yeah, certainly check this one out if you can. There's a big chunk of the score on here as the original Tokyo cast recording of West Side Story. Well, that's about all I've got. So there are some other recordings that are out there that may or may not have been released. I was looking through the kind of the liner notes on one of the recordings when I was preparing for this video, and they said that the Petula Clark Sound of Music from London, 1981, was part of the collection. Never seen it on the collection before. Forbidden Broadway is some version of Forbidden Broadway was released somehow by HMI, I think, unless it went the way of Sound of Music with Petula Clark, which might have just never solidified. The one that kind of sticks out to me that I've never been able to find, I know it exists, and I will find it one day. And this kind of falls into the second group of recordings that I talked about CDs that are released by other companies. It's the Doris Day Annie Get Your Gun studio recording from the 60s. I have the DRG version. It's just that I have all these other HMI recordings here in front of me. And it's kind of the one that sticks out to me that I don't have in my collection. There are a few others that I wouldn't mind getting. Obviously, Mr. Honda was a big fan of Les Miserables. So, you know, not only were the Belgian and Czech cast recordings released, but he also released the highlights of the complete international symphonic recording, the studio recording. He, I believe, released the full 10th anniversary concert, and he released the single EP from the Manchester production. So I might see if I can find the Manchester one, see if it's out there. And I'm sure that there are some other recordings that I might have skipped, but I very much want to thank my friend Robert for helping me, helping jog my memory on this video. He told me to look at castalbums.org, which is always super helpful as far as years, performers, creative team, cover art, everything you can think of. There's so much of it on there. So thank you so much, Robert, for actually that list. I think that you corrected it. It was kind of fused between Honda Music International and HMI all put together. So now they're all on one list and you can see everything that's out there. And as far as I can tell, the only thing that I don't have right now that I really would like is that Annie Get Your Gun studio recording. So I guess, you know, my time is up. I don't know how long I've been talking about this. I could speak about this for days, and I'm kind of sorry to sort of rush through a few of these recordings. But, you know, I will kind of going back here just to let you know, kind of top 5. You got to pick 5 from HMI. Fantastics, Tokyo recording. Hello Dolly, Paris recording. Man of La Mancha, Mexico City recording. My Fair Lady, Odessa slash Moscow recording. And finally, Peter Pan from Hong Kong. So that's all I've got for you. Let me know if you would like to see a video on any one of these recordings. I can go very much more into detail about what the recording sounds like, the history, what the production might have looked like, possibly. So just let me know down in the comments. Also, you know I love a good like, so make sure that you comment, like, and most useful to me is subscribe. Thank you so much for joining me again, and I'll see you next time. Bye.